Good morning, everybody. As you know, last week was Anti-Bullying Week and you did lots and lots of activities and work to do with anti-bullying and talking about how bullying is totally unacceptable at John Wealdon and what would happen if you thought somebody was being bullied. So today I'm going to tell you a short story about just that and somebody being bullied and what we have to do about it. Imagine a school rather like John Wealdon. Imagine that it has a playground where children are chasing and running around and laughing. And try and see this in your mind. It looks like a really good place to be. But now imagine that you can see a child who's not laughing and playing with the others in the playground. This child is called Laura. Laura is standing by herself, close to the wall, trying to make herself as small as possible, trying to be invisible. But it's no use, because they've seen her. Natasha and her friends move slowly and deliberately towards her, and when they're close, but not too close, they start. And they say things about Laura, about her clothes and her hair, about her mum, about her home. "Better not get near to her," says Natasha. "She smells horrible." Natasha does most of the talking. The others just copy her or giggle and pretend to hold their noses. Laura pushes herself back against the wall and she tries not to listen. She's heard it all 100 times before. It's not just in the playground that they do it to her. They whisper and sneer about her in class. And they move away if they have to stand or sit by her. Sometimes they just look at her and she knows what they're thinking. They make her feel ashamed. The bell went and Natasha and the others sauntered into the classroom, and Laura followed miserably behind. For days, weeks, even months, Laura didn't tell anybody what Natasha and her friends were doing. She was too frightened to tell. She thought it would only make things worse. Sometimes she thought that these things must be her own fault. But she was wrong. So one day, Laura was so unhappy that she decided she must tell someone. And it was very hard for her to do this because she was frightened. She didn't know yet, but it was the best thing in the world that she could do. The teacher that Laura told listened to her very carefully, and then she said, "This is really brave of you, Laura, to come and tell me how unhappy you are. We can start to make things better, but I want you to do one more brave thing, and I want you to tell Natasha and her friends how you are feeling." But Laura shook her head. She was far too frightened to do that. "Okay then," said the teacher. "Will you let me tell them everything that you've told me? You don't have to be there." Laura nodded. "Okay, Laura," said the teacher. "Now we can make things better." "Well done." Laura suddenly, somehow, felt a little less frightened. The teacher smiled back at her, and Laura smiled. So, the teacher talked to Natasha and her friends. She held a meeting. So the children arrived at the meeting, and the teacher said, "Thank you for coming. I really need your help. I'm worried about a child at this school. She seems to be very unhappy, and she's worried about it for a long time. All that time she didn't tell anyone, but now she feels she can't keep it to herself any longer, and so has told me. And I'm talking to you because I think that you can help me to make things better for her. She thinks that nobody likes her, and she hasn't got anyone to play with, and no one wants to be her friend." Natasha's friends began to look uncomfortable, but Natasha just tossed her hair and looked away. "This unhappy child is called Laura," says the teacher, "and I'm going to tell you just how bad she's feeling." What Laura said was, "Every day when I wake up, I feel sick and I have a pain in my tummy. I never want to go to school, but my mum makes me. When I walk in the playground, I can hear my heart thumping. It hurts me in my throat. They say things about me and my mum that are horrible, and no one ever tells them to stop. And at night, I lie awake and think about what the children will say to me. And then when I fall asleep, I dream that I'm in the playground and everyone is saying nasty things to me, and sometimes I cry out. And then when I wake up and lie in the dark again, I wish I didn't ever have to go to school." The children looked shocked and uncomfortable, and one of them seems to be crying. At first they look at the floor, and then they wriggle in their chairs. They don't know what to say. "I didn't realise she felt that bad. She never said anything," said Devon. Teacher said, well, she's told us now, and you know how she feels, so can we do something about it? Can you think of anything that you could do to make her feel better? I can make sure she joins in our games at break times, offered Charmaine. We were only messing about, Young Suk said. I'll tell her that I'm sorry and invite her home for tea. Diona said, I'm going to choose her for my partner next time we work in pairs, and one by one the children said things that they would do to help Laura feel better. And what about you, Natasha? Can you think of anything you could do? There was a long pause. I'll let her play with me sometimes, Natasha said. And the teacher smiled, and everyone looked much happier. It's up to you now, she said, to make sure that Laura feels safe and happy. Do you understand? And the children nodded their heads. So, 2 months later, in the same playground, children can be seen running around happily. Imagine there's Laura there, laughing as she plays with the other children who used to be unkind to her. Then Natasha comes up to Laura. Do you want to play? Says Natasha. No thanks, said Laura. I'm fine. But over in the corner of the playground, there's a boy standing, angrily rubbing tears away from his hands. This is Alex. Alex doesn't want to go into class because Farouk and Matt are there. He's had enough of them for today. He's had enough of them forever. Every day he tries to hide, but Matt and Farouk always find him. Often they hurt him, usually they take his tuck money. Today they wiped their muddy feet on his trousers. Imagine that you are in that playground and you can see what's going on. What are you going to do? So have a chat with somebody. Reflect on this. What are you going to do?